All right. I'm all by myself again today, solo. So, episode 43. Thank you for joining us. I wanted to take some time today because I've had patients ask me, kind of, what's your routine? What do you do? And I wanted to walk through my routine and the reasoning why I do what I do. Some of it is just random, but most of it I have pretty good logic of why I'm doing what I do. So, I will say, and I apologize, I printed off the whole routine along with some studies that validated some of my thoughts on this. I wasn't astute enough to save that, and I lost the paperwork, so I'm going to just wing it, and you'll just have to kind of trust me. But these are exactly what I do, right? So I get up really early in the morning. I'm not as early as my wife, but I get up around 4:30 in the morning. One of the first things I do in the morning now is I microdose my testosterone. So testosterone levels should be the highest in the morning. And so I do a microdose of about 20 milligrams of testosterone cypionate every morning. I also take my vitamins on a relatively empty stomach. Um, that doesn't upset my stomach, and that works for me. Then I go and I make a little fluid drink. I use a gut healing product that we have here in the office. They don't sponsor me, but I'll name them anyway. It's the product is Good Morning. It has some aloe in it, has some glutamine, so things that help heal the gut for gut health. So I utilize that. I use 2 scoops of creatine for 10 grams of creatine, and I use a salt, magnesium, potassium, sodium, and I make a big glass of water with those ingredients. Why? Well, the salt to replenish the salt, and the water to replenish the water that you lost overnight. Um, it, Sleeping is a dehydrating event. We lose a lot of sleep breathing through our mouths, or unless you tape your mouth, but we're still going to lose a lot of that through moisture in our breath. So you want to rehydrate, and one of the first things we do in the mornings, we get up and we urinate, so we're losing more fluids. So you want to rehydrate, and I try to do about 20 ounces with that. And then for myself, I start reading. Um, so I'll read for 15 minutes or so. I have a couple different things I read, and I get 15 to 20 minutes of reading in, and then from there, my old routine was I used to take my big handsome dog out for a walk. So I used to. I'm trying not to get emotional, but well, you can tell I lost my buddy a couple weeks ago, but I've replaced him with a now 9 week old little monster. He's learning the rules of discipline and obedience and manners and socialization, but having a 9 week old versus a 12 and a half year old in dog world is a day and night, stark contrast. So the old mornings were a long walk. We would go for 30, 45-minute walk every morning. Now it's training time and a little less time with him because he's a baby and he can't handle that amount of cardio. But he'll get there. And so my cardio has taken a little back seat since my big guy left. Um, so after the walk, I usually come home and then I'll have a cup of coffee. And in my coffee, I use a little collagen, and I use a particular type of collagen called Mobility. And the reason I use that collagen, and orthomolecular makes it, I think Jeremy and I spoke about that. But the reason I use that collagen is because it's been shown in some clinical studies to actually improve the hyaline cartilage in the joints, especially in the knees, where they did a study with young athletes and they found they put a millimeter of hyaline cartilage on their knees within a year of using this product. So I thought that was pretty impressive, especially for a guy who's got arthritis. So I find that to be a benefit for not only for my joints, but also for my skin. Going back to, the creatine, I think we discussed the benefits of creatine, but creatine is good for not only the muscles and kind of improving that reserve in the muscle for energy, but it's also very good for the brain. So there's a lot of more and more studies coming out on the benefits of creatine. A lot of people are afraid of creatine because of the old bro science, and they think it's only for bodybuilders and weightlifters. It is not true. Women get a lot of benefit from this. People that are suffering from early dementia, up into including Alzheimer's, with higher dose creatine are performing better cognitively. So I highly suggest, if you have any fear of taking creatine, that you get over that fear and just take it. There's some internet and social media nonsense about it causing hair loss. It's nonsense. It doesn't cause hair loss. You might get a little water retention from it, but generally not anything to be overly concerned about. So there was some questions of if it can cause some hormone imbalance. No, that's not going to happen either. Um, so that's kind of the. I just wanted to go back and cover that on the creatine. I drink my coffee after that walk because I don't want to introduce caffeine any earlier than 90 minutes after I wake up, and it helps prevent midday crash. So that's my reasoning for that. Now, from there, one of two things happens. Well, it just depends, right? So I said I take the dog for a walk. Well, if it's not a training day, that's those mornings I'll do my cold plunge and sauna. And what I usually will do will be, those, and then I'll take the dog for a walk. So he used to have to wait a little bit for me. But before I had my sauna, I would just do the cold plunge and I would use the walk to warm myself up with. So about 3/4 of the way of the walk, I could start to feel things back in my body because it took that long to warm back up. Anyway, now if it's a training day, that's when I start my exercise. I have a little home gym set up that I do some of my warm ups. So I just kind of use a Vide plate to do some of my stretching in my lower body. I use blood flow restriction cuffs to warm up my arms so I can train really light with a high volume and still stimulate muscle growth. And I also utilize those to train my shoulders. And you're like, well, how does that work? Well, the blood flow restriction is here, but there is kind of a benefit to using them to the proximal muscles. So I warm up at home, and then from there I drive to the gym, and I have a couple training partners that I work out with, and I like to train in the morning. So I find that that's my strongest. Now, the literature actually suggests that midday is actually the best time to train. Unfortunately, I'm seeing patients. So I used to take a long lunch and train from like 11 to noon. But I find just getting up in the morning and knocking it out that way right now is working better. I may change that again here in the near future and try to train midday. We'll see. Um, anyway, that's kind of the morning routine that I do. And then when I get done with training, I use a meal prep company. I have egg whites and some starch with that. Sometimes I throw a little additional meat in there to get my protein in, but I try to keep the starches low. And then it's kind of get ready for work and off to work. Again, I apologize that I don't have all of the information that I really wanted to share with you, because there was a lot of health benefits that had been studied in kind of that protocol. But to take them a step back, we need cardiovascular exercise. Walking a 140-pound Cane Corso, he's well behaved, but we would get moving, and he would run. And a lot of times in those walks, I started picking up skipping, and so that was more of a plyometric movement. And it would do 20 to 30 skips, and then walk for 10 or 15 seconds and repeat it. So it was kind of an interval training, and so I was getting some plyometrics, which is very important. So if you look at some of the literature on jumping on a daily basis, there's a lot of health benefits to that as far as bone density and balance and things of that nature. So I would intermix that in the walks. Sometimes, depending on how well I felt, I could find some areas that I could do some sprints if I was allowed to. And I say that because my big guy, I think he was trying to protect me. If I start sprinting, he's like, "Dad, you're a little old for that. You're gonna fall and hurt yourself, and you won't be able to walk." So he'd kind of chomp at me to get me to stop the run. So, um, but intermix your exercise, I guess, is my point, so you can have a longer duration cardio that's kind of zone 1, zone 2, versus kind of jumping up into zone 3, uh, maybe zone 4, doing something like skipping, or definitely gonna be zone 4 if you're sprinting, and cutting your interval of rest in between. So sprint for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. If you're a runner, you might be able to do like a Norwegian 4x4 and be done in 16 minutes. But if you're not a runner, you're gonna probably cut that down a little bit and do more frequent intervals. But that was something that I did on a regular. So now it's a little different. So I gotta find a new routine for my cardio, because chasing the puppy around's enough. Lately I've been feeling like Rocky training in Rocky One, chasing the little chicken. Um, this little guy is bouncing around, and you got to chase him to try to keep up with him. So, and it's funny because I was doing training with my cuffs on the other day and trying to train arms, and there I am out in the yard chasing this guy around with my cuffs on. So, and the cuffs didn't help at all there. So I don't think they provided any benefit. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my morning routine. Uh, I guess the key is to develop a routine that works for you. Get up in the morning. The first thing in your mouth should not be coffee, in my opinion. You should rehydrate yourself with water, add some salt to it, because that does improve the hydration. Get your creatine in. If you just do that, you're going to be way ahead of the game. The product I use that I mentioned, Good Morning, also has some apple cider vinegar in it. So the apple cider vinegar, some aloe, the glutamine, all gut health, kind of help your metabolism a little bit. So kind of getting ahead of the game there. Some people like to add a little protein in before they train. You could add, protein in if you're going to have some coffee before you go train, which is not a bad idea. Would have that caffeine before you train. Uh, you put some protein in there. You kill two birds with one stone. 30 grams of protein, I think, is all you pretty much need prior to training. I forgot to mention him. It's a training day. After I'm done training, I do another 20-minute sauna there. So it's either sauna in the morning with cold plunge, or sauna after training for myself. And I just direct you back to a couple episodes ago when we talked about deliberate heat and cold exposure. Is there anything else in there that I just wanted to touch? No, I think that covers a pretty solid morning routine. Oh, I just kind of flying all over the place. And I did have this written down, but the reading, I added a couple other things in with the reading. So I have an app on my phone. It's like word of the day. So I get a word, and sometimes I know it, most times I don't, but it kind of helps with vocabulary. You're kind of making the brain work a little bit. And then there's a couple word games that are associated with utilization of that app. So I try to do those word games, actually before I read, sometimes after. But again, it's just kind of stimulating the brain, getting the brain exercising. We talk about, we want to work our body. Well, one of the things that you can do to help reduce the likelihood of dementia, to include Alzheimer's, is you gotta challenge your brain, get it to do things it's not used to doing. If it's an easy thing, if you do crosswords all the time and they're easy, that's not a challenge. It's good, do it. But if you're learning something new during that period, and for a lot of people, that's your time to learn is first thing in the morning. That will help. Um, so I guess that's where I go. I guess the next thing to add in there should be some journaling, but I think that's probably better off at nighttime. Um, and I haven't done that. So, but journaling has been beneficial for many people for a lot of different things. But it really helps to help with your overall mood and well being. Putting these thoughts on paper, kind of organizing them, and taking it from there. Right. There's a lot of trauma journaling people can do to deal with past traumas. So I don't do it, so I'm not an expert in it, but I've heard enough people talk about it and its benefits. So hope this helps you. Sorry that I was relatively unprepared. I looked all over for these papers, as I thought I had them sitting here ready to go for today, and somehow I misplaced them. So maybe I need a little bit better hormone replacement or a little bit more cold exposure so I can wake the brain up, make sure I'm knocking off some neurofibrillary tangles or tau plaques or something. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.